Hello, this is Mr. Newcomb, and today I would like to focus on the second case study related to Unit 1, Conflict and Intervention. This case study will be on Kosovo. I'd like to start off with an Albanian proverb. If your neighbor is an early riser, you too will become one. So how does this apply to the Kosovan crisis? Well, the Serbs, whether they are the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia or the various paramilitary groups, the Serbs would engage many of their campaigns during the morning hours. For Albanians, they knew that they need to flee to safety, and safety would sometimes be in neighboring countries of Macedonia and Albania, in the various refugee camps that would be set up. So over the next few slides, I would like to take a look at the overview of the Kosovan crisis. This region isn't new to conflict. It has a long history of conflict between the various ethnic and religious groups that make up this area, and this area is sometimes referred to as the Balkan Peninsula. Geography has also been a source of tension. And then in the 20th century, you can throw in nationalism, and that just adds a whole new level to the crisis. During World War II, tension did arise between the Serbs and the Albanians. It's going to lead to conflict after the Axis forces, Germany and Italy, take over the region. The Albanians did prefer the Axis powers rule. It gave them a little bit more influence. And this is going to create some tension with the Serbian resistance movements. After the war, Yugoslavia turned to a communist state. And during the communist era, the communists tried to ease ethnic tension. And usually what that means in a communist state is any opposition voices are going to be suppressed, either through laws or just simply arrest and incarcerate the opposition leaders. In 1974, the region of Kosovo is going to get more autonomy, as well as more investment. This area, the standard of living, and development was a little slower than the other regions of Yugoslavia, and so the government decided to dedicate a little bit more funds and give more voice to the Kosovars in internal matters. The Kosovan Serbs feared that there would be a faster growing Albanian population. So in this area of Kosovo, the tensions are going to be between the Serbs and the Albanians that are there. And in 1980, there'll be demands by the Kosovar Albanians that they become a republic within Yugoslavia. So it'll be very similar to like places like Slovenia and Croatia, Macedonia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, and Serbia, kind of be at that same level, be able to sit at the same table. Now, Kosovar Serbs are not going to want that to happen because they knew that they would probably become a minority in this new republic that would be formed within Yugoslavia. So they would prefer that Kosovo just remain the status that it is. To continue here with the 1980s, tension is going to start to really bubble between Kosovo and Albanians, renew tension over economics and political influence. An upstart in the Communist Party by the name of Slobodan Milosevic, who also happens to be a Serb nationalist, will openly support the Kosovan Serbs. So his rhetoric is really going to inflame the situation between the Serbs and the Albanians living in Kosovo. And then when he rises to become the president of Serbia, he is going to be instrumental in changing the Kosovo constitution to give more power and influence to the Serbs. And that is going to force the Albanians, the Kosovan Albanians, to form the Kosovo Defensive League. And that is going to create a state within a state. And so it's a form of a shadow government, and it has no legitimacy outside of Kosovo, but it's just they're kind of like a watchdog group that's going to see what the Yugoslavian government is doing, any more changes that might be happening. And then when Yugoslavia kind of spirals into civil war in the early 1990s, one man emerges by the name of Ibrahim Rugova, and he will become the president of the KDL, or the Kosovo Defensive League. He's going to be very instrumental near the end of the 1990s when Kosovo is going to make an effort to become an independent state. Now, in 1980s, near the back end of it, like 1988, 89, there are cracks in the Iron Curtain. And in 1989, we start seeing the fall of communism in Eastern Europe. And that's just going to reopen these old ethnic wounds that have been covered up. And so it's just a matter of some small little events and words being said by various groups that it's just going to explode into outright conflict. And sure enough, it does. In 1991, Yugoslavia collapses into a civil war. And the various republics begin to break away and want to become independent. So Slovenia was the first to break away, and had a small Serb population. Croatia had a Serb minority of about 12%. And so what we're going to find out is the Serbs are going to become very resistant to when these republics want to break away. Their concern is their voice is going to be lost during this process. So tensions flare up as a result of Milosevic's nationalistic rhetoric. He is a hard, ultra-nationalistic Serb. Croat Serbs want to create a new Serb state in Croatia or join Serbia. That may not happen here. Croatian government changed the status of Serbs to a national minority. That creates more tension. And as a result, war is going to break out here. War was the only path to independence for Slovenia. That was 10 days, so very small war there. Croatia, though, will definitely experience some tension. And this ethnic tension is going to dominate the fighting. And while that's going on, you got Bosnia that was multi-ethnic and various religious groups. You got the Serbs, the Croats, and the Muslims. You'll definitely will have acts of violence that could be categorized as ethnic cleansing and genocide in the Bosnian War from 92 to 95. Again, these events, these examples, these incidences kind of bring back the days of World War II and the Holocaust, all that occurring on European soil. Here, near the end of the 20th century, it is happening again in Europe here. The Bosnian War ends as a result of NATO airstrikes. And this will be the first time NATO actually is going to be used. It was created during the Cold War to be a counter to the Soviet Union. Never used, though. Threats were there. And here, now with communism collapsing, NATO now repurposes itself and gets involved in the conflict. So with strategic airstrikes, it's going to help contribute to ending the Bosnian War. The United Nations and Russia also engages in negotiations. And through a series of accords, the conflict comes to an end. So as a result of that, in 1985, Slobodan Milosevic, leader of Yugoslavia, or what remains of Yugoslavia, will accept the breakup. And Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, and Macedonia become independent republics. And so Kosovo still remains part of a new Serbian state. It's going to be called the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, which included Serbia and Montenegro as well. The situation got worse for Kosovan Albanians. Milosevic would not allow autonomous regions to have more civil liberties and more political voice. So around 1991, while Yugoslavia has spiraled into civil war, a resistance group is going to be formed, and it's going to be called the KLA, or the Kosovo Liberation Army. And the KLA is going to engage in a full resistance to the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. And make a note here about the KLA. The KLA will lack international legitimacy. Some will actually look at the KLA as a terrorist group. If there's any funding for the KLA, it's going to come from Albanian nationalists living outside of Kosovo, even outside of Albania. So really, you could look at this as kind of a rogue group here. The KLA is not even associated with the Defense League of Kosovo as well. So they're not really working together here at the moment. By 1998, the Serbian government had begun a counter effort against the KLA. They look at this as an internal matter, and they just want to end the existence of the Kosovo Liberation Army, and so they step up their initiative against them, which is going to bring international interest and pressure. So even though there were international conferences going on regards to what is happening, one thing is that they're very concerned about the massacres that have occurred in this region since the beginning of the 1990s. The increase in the amount of refugees that are spilling into Macedonia and into Albania, and the policy of ethnic cleansing. The international community does not want to see a repeat of Bosnia and Croatia here. So they're interested, but they don't quite know what to do here. Milosevic refuses any type of peace terms that might be presented to them from the United Nations, as well as from NATO. Now, United Nations and NATO are not necessarily on the same page here. They might have different agendas that could be conflicting here. NATO, like they had done in the beginning of the 1990s, they will also initiate airstrikes to try to get Milosevic to back down. And so their airstrikes begin in 1999, and so we have the start of the Kosovo conflict. I do also want to preface here again that NATO does not necessarily have a mandate from the United Nations, that they might be working independently here. Does not necessarily mean they're on the same page with the Kosovo Liberation Army. So there's a lot of, we could say, agendas playing out here as well. Russia and China will also find themselves getting involved in this conflict here. So now over the next several days, we'll look at the causes of the Kosovo conflict and how this conflict plays out with the United Nations, NATO, Russia, China, the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and as well as the various groups inside Kosovo, the KLA and the Defense League plays out in that conflict, and then evaluate the impact of the Kosovan conflict. One thing I want you to think about as we approach the second case study, think about Rwanda and how the international community responded to Rwanda, And then as we're looking at Kosovo, how the international community is responding to what's going on there. We might be arriving at different approaches here to these different regions. With that, take care.